everyone, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, we talk about all things homesteading, homemaking, and just our journey to a slow and more simple life. Today's video is going to be a recipe video, and it is very timely because we are making some recipes with lilac. I have a very small and humble lilac tree in my front yard that I actually planted for my grandmother when she was still here. And it is just getting more beautiful by the year. It has grown so much in just 3 years. And if you've ever smelled lilac, you know that it is quite a strong smell, but it's so good. Just a lovely scent. And you can also eat lilac, so you can have it in baking or even cooking if you wanted to. But the only downside with lilac, that just like a lot of plants, they only are in bloom and blossom for a short period of time. We usually have them to their most beautiful for about 2 weeks. And so while they are here and beautiful and blooming, I wanted to use a few of them from the tree this year to make a few recipes. So I'm going to be doing a little bit of baking today, but I will also say, of course, lilac is a great ingredient for any body care as well. So if you are making salves or lotions, you can definitely incorporate this, and it smells like lilac, of course. But the two things I'm going to make today is going to be, one, I'm going to bake a lilac honey cake, which I've never baked with lilac before in general, so this is going to be great. And I'm also going to make a very simple lilac syrup, which you can then use in other baking recipes or to make drinks like lilac lemonade or mocktails or anything like that. So first I'm going to go ahead and get started on the cake, and it is a very simple recipe. We're going to need honey, baking powder, 2 eggs, vanilla extract, flour, lilac of course, and buttermilk, which don't fret if you don't have buttermilk on hand. I don't either. You just want to add a tablespoon of lemon juice, or you can use vinegar to every cup of milk that you use, and that makes it like buttermilk. And you're also going to need some softened salted butter. So first I'm going to grab some salted butter and throw it on the stove on a low heat just so it starts melting so that it will be soft. So half a cup is the same thing as 1 stick of butter. And while I was over there, I also popped the oven on to 350 for preheating. So in one bowl, I'm going to go ahead and put our dry ingredients, and that is going to be our baking powder and our flour. So we're doing just 1 tablespoon of baking powder and about 2 1/4 cups of flour. And now I'm going to go ahead and just stir those dry ingredients together just a little bit. Okay, I can now set the dry ingredients aside. In a separate bowl, I'm going to put together the buttermilk, which I'm doing half a cup of buttermilk, so that'll be half a cup of milk and half of a tablespoon of lemon juice. And we need a half cup of honey. And so this is local Maine wildflower honey. It is fantastic. And I love using honey for my sugar in recipes. Just gonna make sure I get all of that goodness out. And I'm gonna really mix this together. Of course, the honey is very clumpy right now, so I really want to give it kind of a good mix to try to get it to be a little more liquidy, more mixed with the milk. It'll start turning a very pretty amber color, the whole thing, when it's all mixed nicely. Now we're going to go ahead and look at our lilac blossoms. So we really only want to get the flower and their petals. I will show you up close, but there is some green stem on the end of the flower petals. And although it won't be dangerous if we get that, we really don't want that texture or that more bitterness in our baking. So we want to make sure we get that off. I just use my thumbnail to snap that off, and then I have all the blossom. And we want about half a cup of these blossoms. So I'm just gonna pick away and add it to my measuring cup. So as far as the half cup goes, I don't pack it down super hard, but I also don't want to leave it super open, kind of in between that. But I got my half cup of lilacs, and I'm gonna throw it into my pan, or pot I should say, of butter that I have melted here, and I'm just gonna really beat that together, really cream it together. And now I'm actually gonna go ahead, get my immersion blender just to really break up those lilac petals and mix it in with the butter really thoroughly. Now in the pot, so it has my butter and blossoms, I'm going to add 2 eggs. And I'm adding 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. And then of course, gonna mix that together really well. When you are satisfied with the mixture in your pan, then we're going to alternate between adding a little bit of the wet mixture, it would be our honey and buttermilk, and then a little bit of the dry mixture, the flour and baking powder. And just adding a little bit at a time, mixing as we go, and I will then be putting this mixture into one of the bowls. But let's go ahead, first add a little bit of the buttermilk mixture. Mix, mix, mix. And a little bit of the flour. And really get that mixed thoroughly before adding more of the buttermilk and then more of the flour again. This is what makes it a really nice consistency. A little more of the buttermilk. That is the rest of it. I make sure to get all the honey out of the bottom that might be left behind. It smells so much like honey now after that. And then maybe it will all fit in this pot and I won't have to put it. Then more of the flour. And I think I will put that back into a bowl. It smells so good and it reminds me so much of late spring. Just, oh, that honey smell and that lilac smell, it's so nice. Okay, with it all mixed up, I think we're just about ready to put it in our cake pans. So how I am going to be baking this today is in 2 of these little pans, and to be honest, I don't know the measurements, so I am sorry about that, but 2 of those. And so I'm going to make sure I check these a little sooner because the recipe I am following, I believe, is for 1 big cake. And so if you're doing smaller ones like this or cupcakes, you're going to want to check because it could take less time to cook through and you don't want to burn it. But I'm going to start by buttering the bottom of these, of course, so it doesn't stick. And then we will throw it in the oven. And the original recipe says 35 to 40 minutes. I think I will check them at probably 30 minutes to see how they're doing, but I will let you know how long it takes me. And then we'll get these out when they're ready to be gotten out. And of course, at that point, we'll do a little bit of decorating. Nothing super fancy, but beautiful nonetheless is my hope. Looking at it now, I think with how much this batter made, I'm just gonna go ahead, throw it into one of my cake pans, and I can then cut it in half later because I was gonna do it in 2. I want to add frosting to the middle, but I can always cut the cake in half once it is baked. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. And I think I will still check it at 30 just to see how it's doing, and we'll see how it turns out. So while that's in the oven, I'm gonna go ahead and do my lilac simple syrup recipe. And this is really simple, really basic, but I thought I would do that today because it can be the base of many lilac recipes, just knowing how to make this syrup. And of course, just like with any recipe, you can make much more or less if you want to by just timesing the fractions. So I'm just gonna make a little bit today because I don't have a lot of lilacs. But the ratio is a 1/4 cup water, a 1/4 cup sugar. I'm gonna be using honey today, with a 1/2 cup of lilac blossoms. So if you're doubling it, it'd be 1/2 cup water, 1/2 cup sugar, and a full cup of lilac blossoms. You can keep going from there. But I washed out this pot I used to melt the butter, and I'm gonna first put my 1/4 cup of water and honey into the pot and get that mixed together on the stove top. And while that is coming to a boil, I will get the blossoms picked once more, measured out, and then I will add those blossoms to the almost boiling water honey combo, and that'll just cook down and make a really great syrup. And you can use any sugar you like. You could use just a 1/4 cup of granulated or even maple syrup if you wanted to. That'd be kind of fun. But since I am in a honey mood, I am using my honey. And there is a 1/4 cup of nice water. And I am going to tend this at first on the stove. I don't want to just leave it while I'm picking the blossoms because that's a good way to burn what I got in here. But I'm gonna pre-mix the honey into the water before I put it over there, and then I'll tend it for a little bit. Thinking about it, I'm actually going to get my blossoms ready first. That way I can just be over there and do the whole process at once and not have to worry about it. So I'm gonna get picking. And this again is a little less needed to be specific about the green because we do strain the syrup from the blossoms at the very end of the process. But I would still recommend trying to get as little green in there as possible because they are a bitter flavor and just not what you probably want to transfer into the syrup. But don't stress if there's a little in there because it's not a big deal. This is just not something you want to throw this whole thing in, you know, and with stem and all, because the bitter stem flavor will get in there and probably not be what you want. All right, we got our 1/2 cup of lilac. Let's go to the stove and make some syrup. I got my stove on full heat. My honey and water is in the pot and it's just gonna start heating up. I'm making sure nothing's burning by stirring it nicely. Now that I am starting to see the bubbles, I'm gonna go ahead and dump my blossoms and mix those in. I went ahead and reduced the heat, and now I'm putting that on and gonna let that simmer for about 5 minutes. Okay, now I'm gonna go ahead, turn it off, and take it off of the heat. So I'm just gonna sit it on the other side of the stove, and that is just gonna rest. I'm gonna leave the cover on it, and it really takes a while to have that lilac flavor fully infused. Anywhere from 3 to 8 hours, depending also on how strong you want yours to be. So I'll probably leave mine maybe 4 or 5-ish hours, and I'll taste it then and see how it is, and if it is good, then we can strain and put it away. But so super simple, and that is done. So now we're gonna wait on the cake. We got about 15 minutes left till 30 minutes for me to check, and I do want to throw together some kind of icing, so we'll do that in a little bit. And here is our cake, and if I was you, I would probably give it a little more time. Mine's still warm. You really probably want it cold before you do the steps, but I am running a little low on time, but you might be too. So I am first gonna go ahead, take my bread knife and take the top off so that I can put a little bit of the icing we whipped up in between. And that icing was just a 1/4 of butter, cold, a 1/4 of honey, and a teaspoon of vanilla extract. And I just mixed it with my hand mixer. But let's go ahead and see how this goes. Beautiful. It is still very warm to the touch. I might throw this in the fridge for just a few minutes to cool off some, because I don't know if you saw that steam come off when I took the top off, but I sure did. So I don't want my frosting to just completely melt. Let's throw this in the fridge. Okay, we got our cake back. So I got my kind of frosting slash glaze. I'm gonna start by putting that. And I have already tasted the cake, by the way, and it is spot on, so good. Just the right amount of sweet, not too sweet, and leaves room to allow to have a little bit of frosting, and that won't make it too sweet either. I'm really not a sweet tooth. I don't like super sweet. I like things that have a little bit of sweet, but I kind of like more coffee cake style desserts. I'm not big on super sweet things, so this is excellent. So I got the top, and as you can see, this frosting is kind of yellowish, kind of not super thick, just kind of gives it kind of a rustic type frosting, I'd say. I'm gonna try to do the sides a little bit. I wish I had one of those kind of turntables for cakes, and also one of those actual cake frosting knives, but I'm just using a cake pan and my spatula, and I'm getting it done. If I had doubled my recipe, then I would have had another one to kind of go on top of it, and that'd be a really pretty cake for any kind of occasion. But just this small one is plenty for me and my family for the week. That frosting is fantastic as well. Now the finishing touch for the cake. Sorry, I'm just licking my fingers. The finishing touch is, of course, going to be some lilac blossoms on top. So that is going to be really gorgeous. So I'm just going to pluck some more and put them in a pretty fashion on the cake. And at the very end, of course, I will show you how it looks. Editing Catherine here. So I realized I never did an outro for this video, so if you like this kind of content and would like to see more in the future, please consider subscribing to join this community of like-minded folks. I do hope you enjoyed seeing how to make a couple of recipes with lilac, and please let me know if you've ever used lilac in cooking or want to, or let me know if there's any other kinds of recipes you'd like me to explore. But that is going to do it for this video, and I hope to see you next time. Bye bye!